Well, welcome viewers. I'm Buck Malick. This is another episode of Western Wisconsin Journal. You may know me as a retired Hudson lawyer and dabbler in all kinds of interesting things. Today, I'm talking with two fans, aficionados, experts on Model A Fords. And the reason for that is that we are going to tell you about the Yellowstone Trail Heritage Days activities of Saturday and Sunday, July 30 and 31, 2021 in downtown Hudson. The fellows that I'm talking with are Gary Thoren and Vince Smith. And I'm going to start by asking Gary to tell us the generalities of Model A Fords. What when we say a Model A Ford, what are we describing?
Well, mechanical brakes, no hydraulic brakes to pull with, and no fuel pump. Gas tank is up between the windshield and the hood, so it's gravity feed. There's a valve underneath the dashboard to turn the gas on and off. A double clutch transmission.
No synchron action, in other words.
Right. And manual choke to the carburetor, and manual spark advance and retarding on the distributor. No sealed beam headlights, just light bulbs inside the glass in the front.
They did have rubber tires though, right?
Oh yeah, pneumatic rubber tires. And there were two basic types of Model A's. There was the 2829 version, and then in 30, they streamlined the car a little bit so that the fenders were, a little bit flatter than the 2829s, also the cowling. And the wheels were different. And well, during the production of Model A's, there was, I think, about 500 different changes during that time.
Well, Vince, behind you, you've got a picture of a pretty superb looking item. Is that actually a Model A Ford?
That's a January 1931 Model A standard Phaeton. In June of 1930, they came out with a deluxe Phaeton. And the difference between the two major differences is the deluxe only has two doors, but that gives you a wider door and bigger people can get into the car. My son has a hard time getting into that car and other Model A's because I guess he just ate too much when he was a teenager or something like that. But my first car was a 30 town sedan, and I'm still in the process of restoring it.
I see. How long have you been working on this restoration of your 1930?
Well, don't hold yourself in the seat there. I started in 1963. So I bought the car before I had a driver's license. My father drove it back from our central Minnesota back to my hometown in western Minnesota. And with no money, I started the restoration. I'm still working on it. A matter of fact, 2 days ago, I was at an auction, and in a bucket with other radiator hoses, I found two original Model A hoses. The auction was going very slow. By 4 o'clock, I was getting tired of standing by those boxes, and my friend wanted to leave. So we got someone else that was going to stay and told him to get those hoses. And by golly, he did. I've got two original Model A hoses. Now I have to, they're as hard as a brick, but I've got to soften them up and I'll put them on my car.
Oh my goodness. How interesting is that? So Am I to understand correctly, for the sake of our readers, that the very first Model A Fords were produced in 1903?
The very first Ford commercial car was produced in 1903, and it was called a Model A back then.
I see.
But
And then-
subsequently, there were Model N's and Model and other alphabet letters up to 1908. And then Ford started with his infamous Model T in 1908.
Yeah, there was ABC, FKN, and RST, and then back to A, and then the 32 Model B.
So it resumed being called, the second round of Model A's started in 1932, are you saying?
No, 28.
In 28, okay. And then when did the run of Model A's end? What was the last year of them?
They ran for 4 years.
So through 1931, I think Scott Huberty, the guy who connected us by calling the Chamber of Commerce and getting this whole idea of bringing the Twin Cities Model A Ford Club to Hudson for this event, has a 1931, he told me.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Is that correct? Yeah. At this point, I think our readers or our viewers would be interested in knowing something about the Model A Ford Club. I was astounded to hear how many members there are in Minnesota of collectors of Model A Fords who belong to your club. Who can speak to that best? Is it Vince?
Well, both of us. Gary is one who's been a member since probably the first Christmas. I don't know. You've been around a long time, Gary.
No, I joined the club right after I graduated high school in 1967. And I'm not the oldest member of the club, but I'm the longest.
You are. And about how many peers do you have who are in the club now?
We have about 270 members. And they're basically in the metropolitan area. However, our last president, who did an excellent job, was from Hudson, Wisconsin. And she had to move out to Colorado. So we had some tail end meetings on Zoom with Catherine, but and it was a female. And she did a beautiful job on her car that she inherited from her father, with a lot of help from club members.
I see. Is that the kind of thing that the club does, is help each other with restorations?
Well, you got to be careful when you say that. And I think, Gary, you'll agree with me. There are some people that join the club and they would kind of like to see somebody else take it over and go through the restoration and that. But the ones that seem to work the best, and Catherine is a good example of that. She had no experience. We hooked her up with experts in the field in our club, and she worked with them. And they gave her homework, and she had to go home and do that work on there, and she did it. I mean, what a prize member in our club.
Well, I know with my 1980 MGB, it's not hard to get parts. At this stage, there's one major supplier in the United States called Moss Motors. How is it with parts for Ford Model A's? Do you just go to your Ford dealer and ask for the parts?
Ford dealer wouldn't have anything. You have to go there's quite a few parts suppliers across the United States, or go to a swap meet, find some original parts, advertise for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think Buck, you know the power of educating yourself. With the Model A, it's imperative that we've got a 300-400 page manual that tells you about the Model A and how it was originally put together and what it used for parts and the dimensions on those parts. We also have experts in the field, but it's education. There are a lot of publications out there on the Model A, just a lot of them. I know of 5 vendors nationally that will sell Model A parts. But as you know, like people, not all parts are created equal. There are some suppliers that are very attuned to details and that. And then there are others that's you wonder why they wasted money shipping pieces out and that, because they're of very poor quality. But if you educate yourself, I found those original hoses in the bottom of that bucket, and I'm sure I didn't see any other Model A's there. So nobody, matter of fact, I showed some Model A's, the difference between original and repo hoses and that. So got them for probably 3 of them for $30.
I see. And you will be able to restore that rubber, you say?
I'm going to try. If not, I'll use it just for show when I'm displaying a car, what it looked like when it rolled off the assembly plant in 1931, the Ford plant, by the way, in Minneapolis. So.
Oh, really? They were Model A's made in Minneapolis?
Absolutely, they were.
Oh, I assume we were talking about Deerfield, but the whole, not all of them.
Dearborn.
Or Dearborn.
See, we were talking about suppliers, and I have to, out of loyalty, mention that we have a major Model A supplier in Minnesota, and he's been here for a long time. It's a guy by the name of Terry, and he's at Little Dearborn. And he started out, I believe, in high school, and he eventually took over the building for Pete Brewer, I think, wasn't it, Gary?
Yep.
And he's still running it down there, but he runs that battle too. He may get distributors in, and they're of very poor quality in that too. So he's always on guard for that. But we have somebody locally that can help with cars. But the best source of information is the Model A Club.
I see. So if somebody shows up and sees one of your cars and they realize that there's an old Model A Ford in the barn or in the garage or left over from their family, and they light up with the idea of getting active with the thing, they have probably come to the right place. I assume they will find, Gary, they will find friendly people who want to talk with them, give them advice and help. And is that the sort of people who are members of your club?
Gary, go ahead.
I was having a little trouble understanding what he was saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think my transmission is a little slow here and garbled. The members of your club are likely to be happy to answer questions and give advice to members of the public. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's a typical thing.
Yep.
Now at the Octagon House all day long on Saturday, July 31st, we are hoping that there will be somebody with the club who will take his or her Model A up to the Octagon House and give people a ride around the parking lot if they would like to do that. Is that something that's likely to happen?
I suppose they could do that, yeah. Just wonder about the liability, though.
Well, the Britfest has an insurance policy, and we are doing the same thing with our little British cars. Somebody is going to be stationed up there giving short rides. Ordinary automobile insurance ought to cover a ride, I would be thinking. Yes,
Scott will set that up if that's what's wanted. One thing I can guarantee, that if I am there and you want to sit in my Model A, especially young kids or teenagers or elderly people, I will let them on the spot sit in there. And then it's always fun to touch that little button in the middle of the steering wheel, and you can hear what an horn sounds like in that. So.
And people can bring their camera phones and take pictures of themselves sitting in the car, I take it.
Yeah. Say, Buck, I was out at that Yellowstone Trail celebration a few years ago. I belonged to 9 car clubs. So it was one of them. I don't know which one it was, but there was somebody from the newspaper. I think they had a drone. At that time, drones weren't that common. Do you know who that might be that took pictures of? They got, I think, the back of my car with the drone and that, but they were taking aerial pictures of the old cars.
No, I don't happen to know who it was at that time, but
Okay.
we might very well have somebody. The webmaster of the Minnesota MG group that I'm a part of is a drone operator and a professional photographer. So that's another possibility. I'm making a note to ask about that from Mr. Cooper to see if he can provide that service. I guess I also wanted to ask what car you think you'll be bringing, Gary.
What car nobody would bring or don't?
What car will Gary be bringing?
Oh, that's a good question to ask Gary.
Well, I'm not sure yet about attending that event in Hudson. That's
If you
I'm
do
having-
come,
I'm having
you
some
do-
physical problems, and that might be beyond my range of driving a Model A.
oh, sorry to hear it. What car do you typically take, like, to a Model A club meeting?
Well, I usually take the coupe, but very once in a while I'll take the big truck. That takes a little bit more to drive a big truck than the passenger car.
Gary explained to me before we went live here that he has a 1930 coupe with a rumble seat. And he also has a Model AA 1929 dump. Do you have that picture, Gary, that you could hold up to the screen
Sure.
again like you did earlier? Get a look at this, folks.
This is a dash plaque that they would give out at events. And it has a big crank on the side to crank the bed up. And we've used it. We've had 2 tons of old concrete on there and dumped it off.
Wow. Imagine now, what sort of horsepower is the engine of that dump truck?
It's 40 horsepower, the same as a passenger car. But this one has an underdrive transmission. So more power, but not any more speed. And the differential on there is a worm drive. So that's a slow gear. And the top speed is 40 miles an hour.
Wow.
And back in 1982, we drove the truck to Green Bay, Wisconsin for a convention at 40 miles an hour, 300 miles each way, and took us all day.
Yeah, but it was worth it since you were traveling through Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
Tell us more about the car behind you there, Vince.
Well, mine is a standard Phaeton. A lot of people think, wow, that's a sporty car. And they say to me, I bet that was really expensive back there. But you got to take a little bit of history in car development in that prior to the automobile, it was horse and buggy. So they drove with no enclosed enclosure. So really, when cars started getting enclosed cabs, those became the expensive ones. This actually is a fairly cheap car, not the cheapest, but it's the second cheapest car that Ford had available. This car was noted for export. You could pack a lot of bodies upright in a container without a top. So Roadsters and Phaetons were noted for export. A lot of went to South America. A lot of these ended up over in the Soviet Union and also Northern Europe and Europe. Great Britain had an assembly plant along with South Africa had a Ford assembly plant and South America had assembly plants. And they also produced rubber down in South America, Ford did. He set up, what was it called, Gary? Fordlandia was the city
Yeah,
that
think
Ford
so.
put together for rubber.
Yep. Yeah, he also
Fordlandia.
had his own forest for the wood that went into the cars.
Right, and Wisconsin was a big part of that because they also made charcoal briquettes. What do they call those briquettes you use for barbecuing and that?
Yeah, well, a member of his family was named Kingsford. So that's where that came from. Is
There you go.
all the wood that they used in the cars, they saved the scrap wood and used it for the charcoal briquettes.
Kingsford's.
I see. Wow.
And that came from Wisconsin. Our glass on a lot of the Model A's and later cars were the silica was mined out of the sand dunes down by the Ford plant and that. He had a glass factory there where Ford made glass. Along with the selection of the plants, Ford always made sure back then that he was close to water because he believed in hydropower. And that's how he got the power to run his plants. And of course, Minnesota's got the Mississippi River, and that's where the Ford plant used to be.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you, I'm curious, what did you use anything other than water in the cooling system for the radiator and the cooling of the engine? Did they use an antifreeze back then?
Well, they had alcohol that they put in the water and that, so they may not. Gary can maybe answer this better than I can. I don't use antifreeze because if
No,
it
I don't
spills
either.
on your paint, yeah,
You just drain it in the winter.
yep, just drainer.
Except for last year on Leap Day, our club has an Ironman tour every Leap Day, February 29th last year. And so then we got probably about 25 Model A's came out that day, and the TV crews filmed us. And my wife and I had our truck out for that one, but we were having a little bit of troubles with it because I think I've got a torque down on the engine head some, because we weren't having trouble with it with just water in the cooling system, but when we put antifreeze in, it started steaming all over. And so we haven't had it out of the garage since then.
Oh, bizarre. Scott was telling me that one of the other activities that your club does besides have meetings and shows is that you go to a lot of hanger dances, apparently. Tell our viewers a little bit about that. What
I can't hear you, Buck. Is it hanger dances you're saying?
exactly?
Oh, that's when we want to mix with the aircraft people and that, the flying people. I've been to a few of those, but that is not something that we're really noted for, I don't think, in that. We have hanger dances that we do get invited to and go, and they see the Ford tri-motor there and things like that. But we do, though, Buck, and we got to mention this, Wisconsin, we have a major touring event in northern Wisconsin. We've had it for 2 or 3 years out of Bayfield, Wisconsin. And this year it's on October 4th, which means the leaves are starting to change. And it is beautiful driving the Model A down there. I mean, if I could describe heaven to you, that would be it. Even though I'm from Minnesota and we're in Wisconsin, but it's absolutely beautiful. And that we stay at the hotel in Bayfield. We tour about 4 days, and it's absolutely beautiful.
I can believe it.
Earlier you wondered about club members helping other club members. Another events we have is in the winter months, we have restoration clinics. All the way from September to May. But now we haven't had a clinic since February of last year because of the COVID. But they'll do things like engines my wife and I last February last year, we hosted a movie night where one of our members sells popcorn out of his Model A truck. And he brought in his equipment and made popcorn. And then we had one Model A related movie, Merrily We Roll Along with Groucho Marx, and it showed the early days of automobiles and getting stuck in the mud. And then they'll cover anything from an engine to a windshield wiper.
And for women, it used to be a few years ago that the women would put on clinics on fashion. So we collect era fashion for that. Gary, I know you've got clothes. I do too. And that for whatever, if you want to go recreational or if you want to be formal or whatever, we've got it. The only drawback with that is as you get older, the parameters of your body change and they don't always fit well in the clothes, you know.
Well, yeah, the clothes shrink, I find.
Oh, it's got to be the clothes, yeah.
Indeed.
Well, yeah, I've got my father's and my uncle's suits, pinstripe from back then, but neither one of them fit anymore. Another big event we had way back in 1982 here is our club sponsored a national convention where we had probably about 500 Model A's came from all over the country. And we met out to the Radisson South in Bloomington. And before that, there were 4 Model A's that drove around the world. And they met 2 of them from California, 1 from Washington State and 1 from Ohio. And they met here in March. Our convention was in July. So in those 4 months, they managed to drive Model A's around the world. I rode with them for the first 400 miles to Chicago and then took a plane back. But so then they went east, crossed Europe, and they had pictures of the Model A's in front of the pyramids in Egypt. And then they got shipped to Perth, Australia in the western end. And they only had 5 days to drive all the way across Australia, the Nullarbor. They were told that they should get rhubars on their Model A's, special bumpers for deflecting the kangaroos. But they never did. But then they got to Sydney on the East Coast, and they were running out of time to get back here in time for our convention. So they rode back in a 747 Combi aircraft, and the 4 Model A's were down in the belly of the aircraft. So then when they got up in the air, the pilot came on and told all the passengers about these people and their trip. And then a few at a time, he actually let them go down and look at the cars while they were flying over the Pacific Ocean. So they wrote a book on the trip. So that was an interesting thing there.
It's very interesting. It's amazing what collector folks get into and how they amuse themselves and what challenges they take on.
One of the Model A's broke a rear axle in Jordan or Syria, but they had an extra axle along, so they spread the plastic out on the sand and were working there all night. Got it put back together.
Fantastic. Is there anything more you guys want to say about Model A's or your club or the event in Hudson? Otherwise, I'll bring up the rear with a summary of what's going on in Hudson that weekend.
Well, I think people should know that the Model A that we deal with, the later Model A, there were 4 years of production and they made over 4 million Model A's. Those of you who are listening, your neighbor could possibly have a Model A in their garage, and that they pop up all over the place in that.
Or if not a whole Model A, parts or tools. People got rid of their Model A's and they kept tools like jacks and screwdrivers and this kind of thing. And I run across that kind of thing at estate sales now too.
Yeah, but like Gary said,
I got an original jack for my AA, which is different from a passenger Model A jack. with the jack handle, which that's usually missing. And I got this jack end handle for $5, which I thought was good.
Yeah.
I was going to say one little short story about Model A's is we used to have a guy in our Model A club that had a Model A sedan with a very special trunk on the back. This trunk opened up side to side so you could put 5 full-size milk cans in the trunk. So they were going to a convention, him and his wife and the 3 smaller kids in the back seat, along with mom and dad's suitcase. So where were they going to put the kids' luggage? The kids' luggage went into the milk cans in the back. So then when they got to the convention hotel, Dad is carrying these milk cans across the lobby to their room and embarrassing the kids. I don't think you knew him. I don't think you knew him, Vince. That was Bob McMullen.
I don't know him. That was before I was conscious, I think.
Yeah.
One thing, Buck, that would be interesting to talk about are how do you drive around Model A's, or when you're driving by them in modern cars, or if you're in a Model A, what are some of the feelings that we have when driving it? Gary alluded to mechanical brakes. Now, those mechanical brakes work fine if they're set up right. You can't stop on a dime, and even if you could, you don't have much friction on the tires, so they'll slide along on the asphalt or gravel that you have. One other thing, the Model A does not have turn signals. So that means all of the turning is hand signals, and it comes out on the left side. If you're driving on a 2-lane highway and you're on the right side in a modern car, Model A is on the left-hand lane, maybe going around somebody or something, you can't see what he's signaling. And a left-hand turn is not a waving sign. That's a left-hand turn sign. I get waved at all the time in that, but I don't even think in driving school or in classes at school they teach hand signals, but it's very important in the Model A. Now, Model A's can be modified to have electric turn signals in them, but the original Model A did not have turn signals. We have a law in Minnesota, and I'm sure Wisconsin has it, is that you're not to pass when you're in an intersection. I used to think, well, now, why would they do that? Well, think about in a Model A, and if you are going down the left lane through an intersection and you've got a car on the right-hand side behind you a little bit, you signal that you're going to go into the left lane, they can't see the signal at all. And you're talking about a possible collision. No seatbelts in the Model A either.
Yeah, Minnesota law is you don't have to have it on your car if it wasn't standard from the factory.
It's grandfathered in, yeah. Seatbelts. People ask about seatbelts. Personally, I don't want to be strapped in the Model A if it's going to roll on me. You could see what I have for a cage on the Model A, and in the background, there's nothing there. They're just 2 glass windshield posts. That's all. I want to be thrown as far from that Model A as possible. So I do have my, there were seat belts put in this car during restoration, but I've modified them out of the car.
Yeah,
And you got the gas tank right there in your lap.
You got it right on your lap. Yep.
Yeah, there's been some bad accidents with antique cars too. Years ago, well, in Minnesota, in August, they have a car run from Old Car Run. Vince has been in it from New London to New Brighton, Minnesota. And one year somebody was driving about a 1903 Oldsmobile, got a little curved dash on it, and some modern car came up alongside him, sideswiped him, and the car and the passengers went into the ditch. And they were hurt bad, and they had borrowed this car too, it wasn't theirs. So the owner did manage to pick up the pieces out of the ditch and rebuild it. It had a wood body on it, so he had to make a new wood body. But it's a danger out there with cars. I don't put mine on the freeway anymore.
But in a way though, Buck, if we're coming to Yellowstone Trail Days in Hudson, Gary, we're going to have to go on the freeway. They took our best Model A bridge. They made it a walking bridge now down in Stillwater. I used to sneak across to Hudson on that with the Model A, but now we're going to be right up there on that bridge going in the slow lane to get to Hudson, you know.
There's no way around that?
Well, you could detour through Prescott. Highway 10 crosses at Prescott about, that'd be about 12 miles south of Hudson or so.
Oh, is that right? 4 miles south?
So about 12, I think.
12, okay.
So you could go down through Afton, you know, and cross over at Prescott and come back up on F if you didn't want to do the interstate bridge.
So that's good to know.
In fact, maybe that's the right segue here. That's what the Military Vehicle Preservation Association is going to do with their route. So let me put the viewers in the picture on the rest of the weekend. And we've been talking about the Model A Ford car show, which is from 10 to 1 in Lakefront Park in Hudson. There are two other car shows going on right adjacent to them. The Vintage and Classic Car Show, 10 to 1, also in Lakefront Park, right next to it. And the Britfest Car Show, same times, but on the closed block of Walnut Street in front of Dick's Bar. So the Vintage and Classic Car Show is at the location it's been at for years under the arch. The Model A Fords are a little further into the park between the arch and the band shell, essentially. And the little British cars, like my MG and Jaguars and Triumphs and other British cars, are on Walnut Street of Hudson. And that's all from 10 to 1 on Saturday, July 31. But the evening before that, kicking off the whole weekend of interesting vehicles in Hudson, the military convoy of the Military Vehicle Preservation Association is coming into town in the late afternoon on Friday, July 30th. And they are doing a parade from Faith Community Church over to Vine Street, down to the river, south along Lakefront Park, east past the Dairy Queen, up Cooley Road to the Taco John's, across the 11th Street Bridge and over to the Hudson House, and parking in the Hudson House parking lot overnight. So that's Friday night, July 30th. If you're in town early enough to see the parade, which will probably be around 5 o'clock, depending on just when they arrive in Hudson from their start out in Minnesota in the early morning. You can see the parade. Otherwise, you can just show up at the Hudson House and kick tires and look at engines and stuff like that and talk with people who own these vintage military vehicles, Jeeps and ambulances and Deuces and stuff like that. The military vehicles are leaving early in the morning on Saturday, the 31st. They're going to pull out at 7 a.m., they think. At the same time, a pancake breakfast is starting at St. Patrick's Catholic Church, and that'll go until 10:30. Pancake breakfast. There's geocaching going on. And then there are these car shows that we've just been talking about from 10 to 1 at the Living Vine Church, which used to be called the First Baptist Church in downtown Hudson, 300 Vine Street. From 10 till 4, there'll be a hospitality center with ice cream and music, organ concert. You know, they've got that famous old organ, small musical groups on the lawn, and things like that from 10 to 4. And at the Octagon House, all during the day from 11 to 4, they're doing tours of the Octagon House Museum and ice cream social on the lawn of the Octagon House. History speakers, other good stuff like that. So it promises to be a big weekend, weather permitting, and the Model A Fords will be coming to Hudson. We hope that in future years, we hope that you'll have a good experience with the Twin Cities Model A Ford Club, Vince and Gary, and we hope you'll come back in future years and we can show the public of the area a really good time in Hudson that last weekend of July. Thank you for being willing to be interviewed, Vince and Gary. And I hope that your health allows you to attend, Gary, and I'll look forward to seeing you, Vince, for sure. And we'll have fun in Hudson on July 31st, Saturday.
But if we have time, I might add that AA Truck is a movie star too.
Oh,
Back in 1992, they made a movie here, PBS American Playhouse. Movie was called And the Earth Did Not Swallow Him, and it was about migrants during the 1950s, and they rented our truck for several days, and they filmed down in Hamburg and Cologne, Victoria, Minnesota. So we've got some time on that movie, and my daughter and I, we got to stay down there and watch them filming, and we ate with the cast and the crew, and it's a movie that hardly anybody has ever heard of because it was made for American Playhouse, so it's not on the big screen.
Well, to add to Gary, my car was even in some lesser known films, 2 of them that I guarantee you'll never see. But yeah, our props, I just thought, I have a Thompson machine gun as a prop for my Model A. It's a prop gun in that, but 2 movies. Mine's been in 2 movies. The Excelsior one at the cemetery, and then Lake Calhoun with the clown that stole the car or something like that. It was a film. So we have fun with that too. Yeah.
well, good. If those are available by links to someplace, maybe we can get the.
Well, I
get the
think
information.
if you type in that title of mine into the computer, it will come up. It is available for sale. We've never seen it on a shelf. We had to order it.
I see. All right. Well, great. Thanks, guys. It's been wonderful
Thank you.
talking with you. And as I say, we'll look forward to having fun together. So this is an episode of Western Wisconsin Journal. It's Buck Malick signing off.